Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I interview top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Thomas Helfrich. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm delicious, thank you.
That's awesome. Good to know. So you are the founder and CEO of InstantlyRelevant.com. And I'm very excited to be talking to you today because, I'm all about processes and procedures. And one of the most important processes that I find that the business has to have is how to generate leads. Is the marketing, but specifically how to bring in more leads, relevant leads. And we're going to talk all about relevancy today and how to actually create relevant leads for the business, because that's your area of expertise. That's what you do.
That's correct. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Well, I always like to hear the story of the person. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got started and what got you to found Instantly Relevant.
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. It's truly an honor to be here to kind of talk to your guests and kind of answer this kind of question of relevance and how it plays to marketing and lead generation. My story backs up to, I'll probably date myself a bit, but I was born out of kind of .com period. So I definitely remember myself being a better developer than I was. But I was always very good about speaking about technology and specifically how it impacts business and all the kind of things go from the executive side of this is what we want to accomplish and do, and here's the tech that can solve it, to here's the changes in people, staff, technology stacks you have to do. That takes you on a consulting path in your career when you do that. When you talk well about tech and you can only code a little bit about it. Through that journey, though, I developed an expertise probably in the last 10 years, as you go through the KPMGs, the PwCs, the big consulting things of the world, to develop an expertise in intelligent automation and AI systems. And specifically where you're leveraging the right human with the right technology in the right moment to automate as much as you can, to move as fast as you can, to accelerate the human behind it. At least that's my point of view of how you leverage technologies to accelerate humans, not really to replace. And so through that kind of journey, and it's an accelerated kind of path, I just kept seeing these same problems over and over that with marketing. And the problem being that marketing was very good at the corporate level, at least, of producing metrics, of producing all the wonderful things they're doing, all the content, but very poor at producing leads for sales for the most part, or really ineffective from the cost. So you spend millions in salaries in marketing, and it's producing just a handful of things. And I saw this more and more. And then as I got into kind of the startup world, I saw this even more prevalent, that people really struggled with telling their stories and how do they get leads in marketing. So I just took some of the principles of intelligent automation, that right human, right moment, right technology, and applied it to the lead generation problem. And the idea behind relevance is, just in short, that if you're, people buy from who they know, like, and trust. But the truth of the matter is they don't buy from just them. You have to be relevant, because I may know, like, and trust you, but if what you sell isn't relevant to solve my problem, I'm never buying anything. And so the idea of relevance, to accelerate that into the conversation and into the interactions and your engagements in social media, in particular around LinkedIn, is super critical and important to generating leads.
Of course. So give an example of a lead that is relevant and a lead that is not relevant, or engagement that is relevant and engagement that is not relevant, I guess would be a better question.
Yeah, well, and that is it. So any truly definition of a lead is they would be relevant. And just maybe not be right time, right now, because if they're not relevant, they're not a lead. I'll take that just thread a second here, because one of the problems I see in lead generation, in particular on LinkedIn, when people are hiring these companies to do these cold email or cold messaging outreaches and these sequences and all these things, they're just brand killers. So if you're doing that in the audience, and you're hitting thousands of people every month or whatever, and you're slowly draining your brand, your company brand, your personal brand, because let's say for math's sake, you have 5,000 people you've contacted. and 100 or so have raised their hand and said, I'm interested. But you just spam 4,900 people. And so when your brand, your personal brand, your company is being slowly downgraded because you're in the spam box, you're hurting your brand long-term for success. You'll get short wins, you'll get things, but if you're in specifically B2B sales, you are better served to be relevant. And what I mean by that is, take your targeted, this is what we do. I share it with everybody. We take a targeted list of people that an individual or company wants to meet, an ideal customer profile list, let's say, and we start engaging with them with commenting, with reacting to the things they're posting, with strategy of almost vanity, of giving attention to others and not ask for anything. Just go out there and comment, be sincere with it. We're a time saver. We do this for you as part of your, as account management. And so while you're out there doing other things, or as we're doing this interview, people are out there networking for me. They're out there commenting on targeted lists, but they're not asking for anything. And to make that work, the relevance on the flip side of this, make sure your profile on LinkedIn or your business profile or your teams, those are also relevant. Meaning when they land on your page and say, who was this guy or who was this woman who commented on my post? They land on your page and they see what you do for them. They see what they should follow, where they can go to learn more. They see some reason why they should connect with you, not where to go connect with you. And they get invited in, by percentage, by fraction, by little movements to trust you more, to be more curious, to be more interested in what you do, because they don't even realize that possibly that they were your customer list. And if they see what you have and they want you to do, and they have what you want, they'll contact you. They'll inbound connect with you and ask for a meeting. And when that happens, you're no longer selling anything. You're just learning, you're just giving, and they're buying from you, especially if your sales funnel and your sales process is somewhat strong and you are taking that kind of the sales motions in the way that you're still educating. And the next thing you know, they're asking you for a proposal. I know I think I've really shortened that window of how that works, but that is how relevance works specifically on LinkedIn social media.
Good. It makes sense. So how long do you actually engage in comments and answering people or commenting on what they do? Like, how long does that in the process usually takes?
Yeah. So from a starting point, it happens like day one, right? So we start working as soon as we have the list. From an execution standpoint, C is typically this. For every, let's say, 10 people that we're commenting on, 2 to 3 will inbound connect almost immediately within the day and say, hey, thanks for the post. Probably 1 to 2 or 3 of those are selling you something. One might be interested. Over a couple of weeks, let's say you've commented a couple of times, depends how many times they post, that same number will come back in that next, about 30, 40% will inbound connect with you. And then you at that point have now commented on somebody else's post. And if they haven't inbound connected with you, you can then feel much more comfortable trying to send a connection request to them because they've seen your name in a post. Now, I would recommend, the answer to your question is, comment several times. Just take your inbound leads of people that are interested in you, get enough volume to make that make sense, and then wait a few weeks, months, whatever. When you've commented a few times, you not ask for anything, and then go do a connection request, because then it's not coming across as super salesy. Even if you're not even asking for anything except for a connection request, it'll still be kind of the guard will go up. But if you commented a few times, never asked for anything, and eventually you ask for a LinkedIn connection, say, hey, I've enjoyed your post, would love to connect, almost without doubt, they will connect with you. And that could take, a few weeks to a few months, depends on active, this predicates that they're active on social media to some degree.
Yeah, that's my question. What happens if they don't? What happens if they are in your targeted list, you're doing B2B sales, but that person is not necessarily on social media? Like, for instance, is it they just don't engage on social media because that's not where they're strong suited? Maybe that's their weakness. They don't do it, or they don't feel it's relevant. What do you do then?
Yeah, so you can use some other technologies to, you can warm up people around them. So you can get introductions to people you want to meet. But if they're not on social media, the chance of you knowing to connect with them is much smaller, that you would know.
Well, no, let's say they are on LinkedIn. I'm talking about, you were saying about spamming people on LinkedIn. So let's say that person is on LinkedIn, semi-active, but, there is that person, he or she hasn't posted in, 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so typically with those, you're not going to get the reactions from the inactives on LinkedIn and social media. It's a afterthought. They're just not engaged. Typically, those are just harder people to connect with. You can still find emails and phone numbers, and that's another secondary approach you can take with meeting them. I just wouldn't lead with that. I think there's a warming actually, I know there's a warming up period that needs to happen to be effective on those other pieces, so not to be perceived as spam. So what we focus on is the warming up, the inbound effect, the attraction inward of your services, and then you back into secondary as a strategy, email outreach and phone calls and other things like this as a human interaction. If you start with that, it's just the success rate's too low. There's a better way to do it.
Yeah, so instead of cold calling, is basically the cold call is to warm them up and then ask for something or offer something.
Well, the comments would be to warm them up, right? So the interaction, the engagement, the online interactions would be, by the time you've picked up the phone, or someone from your organization has picked up the phone, hopefully it's the same person that's commenting, they've seen your name, as I've seen your post, I got your, we have your number. That was just creepy. But the point is, if they haven't connected with you and given you your number, a cold call is still creepy. It's like, how did you get my number? But at that point, the idea is at least you're a known entity, and you should be. There should have been some kind of, brand recognition, if you will, if someone's calling you at that point.
Sure, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Good. So, I know you also are big into the AI, and you have your own opinions and ways of working with it. It's a very big subject right now, very hot subject. What are your thoughts on AI and using AI in marketing?
The genie's out of the bottle. I mean, we've been using OpenAI's, that's ChatGPT's back end, right? So OpenAI's beta for almost 3 years now. So we've had access for a long time. It's good to see the rest will catch up. That makes raising money around the investment of ChatGPT related projects much easier. But I think you absolutely should be using it. Now, anybody can create content now with GPT-4 and what'll come beyond. It's what you do with it is what's going to matter. So how you personalize it, how you make it yours, how you create your brand, your messages, your values into it. The AI will do a very good job of that. But where you place it and where you use it in context of comments or strategies or your content strategy or your marketing strategy or just your outreach, that's where it's going to be effective. Now that everyone has the advantage, no one has the advantage. Just those who know how to use it better have the advantage. And so if you're not using it, you are getting behind. Unless you're taking the, when the horse was replaced by the car and you're now going to become the expensive horse dealer, it's going to take some time for that to become a fashion item, to be very creative, and people pay high dollars for an article or something like that. That's going to go away for a little while. But if you could take that creativity and be accelerated by the right technology in the right moment, you will be very well sought out. You know how to use that technology to go faster, and it'll help you for sure. So you have to use it.
How do you do that? Let's talk about some tips and strategies. Like, what would you recommend? Like, what would be the process of doing that?
Well, specifically, let's say just the text content ration. So ChatGPT or its its competitors, just staying in that zone. I think is the simplest example. When you have the prompts and you create chats, don't talk to it like Google. Don't talk to it like, hey, write just this. Be very specific of, hey, take the persona of fill in the blank of your persona. I'm skeptical about X, Y, and Z. I'm interested in A, B, and C, whatever it is. And at the end of that, put it into the chat and then create the chat as a person that you're talking with. What do you think about this? What article would convince me to buy? What are the 5 points I should know? What are the 10 things I shouldn't do? And it'll do a really good job of creating content around that persona for you. And that's how you use it. And then when you take that, look at the data, make sure that makes sense. There's no fact checking really going on right now. There's no verification of the content itself. But look at it. Does it make sense? Is it aligned to your personal view and brand? If not, swap stuff, put it in there. But leverage those technologies as if they were a very smart, like a human that you're just talking with. It's amazing. Even I write the word please. It's funny. But you don't have to, but I do anyway.
So like you said, please
write. I write that in my chat. I take the idea that that's a person I'm writing to. So I actually even put niceties and other things in there.
Nice. Okay, good. All right. So how important it is, our listeners probably wondering right now in terms of what is your opinion or what advice can you give in terms of the importance of actually not advertising, but being engaged on social media to find leads? I mean, is that really an avenue that each business should take, or are there specific businesses that it works better than others? Should that flank other marketing strategy? What is your take on that?
It will depend a bit on your business. I personally believe nearly all businesses should be on social media of some form. You need to go where your audience is. And so, for example, if you're a B2B services company, likely LinkedIn's a really good one for you, especially if it's like a technology, big enterprise technology service, or even software as a service. LinkedIn is a great place to go. I mean, like, you should be on there. If you're on the consumer side, I would say like more Instagram, Facebook might be a better social media place to be. But when you're there, the same rules apply. Be authentic, give, care about other people's content. Don't we all over people, like we do this, we do that, we do whatever. No one likes to get weed on, joke. Well, very, very few small people in the world. But anyway, most people don't want to get weed on, and don't do that. So focus on the customer voice, solving problems in the industry, talk about the problems that can be solved and how they can be solved. Be an educator, give information away so people are interested in you and attracted to you. And that works on any of the social media platforms. I personally say always stay on the positive. So Twitter might be a harder platform to stay. It seems to be very negative at times, but you have to be out there. You should be using this, and you should be engaging. Now, do you have to do it yourself is the question that comes up. And if you have the bandwidth, yeah, you should try to, be out there and be present and be engaged. But at some point you should be too busy with higher value activities. And this is when you bring in outside firms like we like Instantly Relevant, or you bring in employees to do this. But our personal take is, when people hire us, they get a whole marketing team and a lead generation team fractionally. And so you couldn't, you'd be spending 12x on the, if you've hired all that. So there's strategies you can play to get a lot more power at a fractional cost and not have to put people on your books for a full-time employment. And those are the strategies that tend to really give you scale and value out there to your marketing and lead generation.
Absolutely. And I actually just interviewed a Dee Waxman from New York. She's a consultant from New York, and she was talking about, that's what they do, is they basically provide different fractional services for businesses. And we had a whole discussion about the importance and the value of having fractional help. So what you are providing is definitely, they can get all that expertise and the doingness and the help without actually having to hire 12 employees like you were mentioning.
Well, yeah, exactly. What usually happens, let's say in smaller businesses or even startups that are pretty well funded, they may do a lead marketing person. So they some of her strategy, they'll usually do some kind of social media manager, and then one other marketing manager to help them handle content events, things like that. So each of those people will do one, maybe 1.25 things pretty well. So they'll be this plus that. And what you're missing are about 13 of the core roles that are there to get it done. And the challenge with that is it's traditional thinking. It's doing a process because you've always done it. That, we need people, seats. You don't. You need people who can execute and be held accountable, at the same time de-risk your business from cash flow and other things like that. That's what, when we do month-to-month services. So we don't ever do long contracts, because our idea is we're going to drive value every month, or you can get rid of us. You can't do that with an employee. You really can't. You can, but your Glassdoor ratings get crushed if you do. And so the idea is find things that drive value all the time, focus on the, the revenue of today, revenue tomorrow, and then de-risk everything you can around it. The fractional services from, accounting to finance to, marketing, sales,
HR, yeah, absolutely.
HR, all that. Like there's things that are not core to your business. So bring the pieces in together, find a person to manage the pieces maybe, but that's a much more powerful way to grow a business. Now, once you're an enterprise and you have oogles and oogles of money, sure, go get your teams, do what you want with it. But even then, I'd tell you that's probably a waste of budget. There's better ways to do it.
Understood. Absolutely. Okay. So, you have one of the topics that you like to talk about is more marketing growth in less time, right? So the marketing budget. You have the marketing budget, but how do we maximize? I mean, we talked about budget for small companies. You just mentioned it, right? How do you make sure that you maximize the budget, the marketing budget for your for your clients?
Yeah, it's the ROI question that comes up. Well, you start with what is it you're trying to accomplish, the goal, the objective, and you take the most focused path to get there. So I'm really focusing probably on the solopreneur, the individual, small business, let's say 100 or less people who don't have endless money, who can't afford the mistakes of bad marketing hires and stuff like this. What I find is if you're a smaller company and you're trying to repeat the best practices of a big company, because maybe you've come from there, that's what you've known, you're going to lose. So if you're saying, oh, I need to get, this expensive CRM, you're going to need to get, we're going to have to run ads. We're a B2B service. We need to run ads. We need to go do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to absolutely kill your budget with things that you probably could have done on a much more connected level. Smaller businesses are definitely more human to human buys, even if you're, you're selling to a committee or something else, or a bigger company. But the smaller business owners should really get in the weeds with how can I, connect with as many people legitimately as possible? How do I get my product and service out there without having to spend a ton of advertising? There's way more creative ways to do that. So to maximize it, we start with the goal and say, here's where your customers are. Here's some ways to interact with them without doing ads. Personally, we don't do ads. We don't do Google ads. We don't do any, we don't pay for PR. We do everything inbound. And it's all about the interest. And that's a bit scary because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't, when's the next one? But they come because you're out there doing the right things and you're repeating the same models. You're just doing it in a way that'll create. So the maximized budget for us is you try to create as much inbound effect, maximize your current customers and word of mouth and testimonials to be in introductions, and leverage the network you have to expand in a very relevant way and a very connected way, and less so of just, ads outreach. Now, ads have their place. Don't get me wrong. They do. Most people fail at it because their landing pages, their branding statements, their value propositions, unique selling propositions aren't developed. And so when we do ads for customers, it is after we've gone through making sure their branding aligns to the targeted audience, make sure their product solves a problem that people want to buy, make sure their landing pages communicate and their website actually is good. Because once you're in the ads game, all that stuff really matters. And that's big cost. Make sure that the front end and back ends are all matching. And so it's a much bigger lift. It's often missed.
Absolutely. So you were basically mentioning, I like those points that you mentioned, is leveraging your network, leveraging your existing, like maximizing your existing client base, referral and word of mouth testimonials, right? And then obviously engaging the engagement on social media was the first thing that you mentioned in order to create that inbound. What would be your advice in terms of leveraging the network? How would you do that?
Yeah, so the network you develop, it's connected, right? There's people you know and other people you know, but leverage it to provide value to them. So do some free, I hate the word webinar, but some kind of free hosting of, we're talking about this problem today, we're not selling anything, get out there and give away information, bring that network together into community. So if you have a network and you have an idea and people come to that's kind of a community, if that community gets behind a bigger idea, that's a movement, right? And if a movement becomes like unstoppable, that's a religion, right? So try to get to the movement level, but build communities within your network that care about common things and don't sell them things. Just bring them together and be the person that brings them together. And when you do that and you're on brand, you're on point from the value you're adding to that network and to that community, people will find you for the things they want to solve because they'll trust you. So that's how you do it. It's a different lift. It's not like an overnight thing or super easy. It's just a different path. But it's one that I believe in the long term lowers your marketing cost, going back to the original question of budget, and it improves your brand significantly as position yourself as a authoritarian or a
well, we say authoritarian. I would prefer like authority, right? Authoritarian has more of a
authority. Yeah. My use of words are
yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
English as a first language is tough for me. I'll tell you what, it's a EFL.
And that's why I'm here to smooth it out. No problem.
You can edit that part.
Yeah, exactly. No, we're gonna leave it on. We're gonna leave it on because that's authentic. Anyway, what about
or not there.
Testimonials and word of mouth? What's your recommendation there?
If you have happy customers, ask them when they're happy if they would be willing to do a written or verbal, or a, audio or video testimonial. And, we facilitate these for a lot of our customers because it's hard to kind of do if you don't know what you're doing. So, I'll interview somebody and bring them on and we'll just film them and we'll get them to say the right things. And then you piece the video together in little 30-second segments. But actually take some time to put some production value into the video or the audio testimonials and just have a conversation. Some of my favorite questions are, what did you expect from us that you got? What did we do that you didn't expect that was great? And you go through of, if you had not used our service, what would you have missed or what you can live, and just get people talking about it. And what'll emerge is where your true unique selling propositions and your value propositions are. And then once you have those testimonials, what I'd recommend is creating articles that are tied to the what they're talking about and create, the thought leadership around that, create social media posts that are examining those problems. And here's the customer talking about how it was solved. Create assets that are tied together and connected around that testimonial video or statement.
I love it. I think it's great. Good. So, and then you were talking about leveraging your existing customers. How do you do that? Like, how would you create leads out of your existing client base or customer base?
Well, there's one direct where you can ask, say, do you know anyone else that may need our services? And they don't have to be in the same industry. They can just be like, oh, I have a friend who also owns this, or have a partner. If you directly ask, because most people aren't thinking of that, but if you directly ask, they will. I'll give you an example there where I learned this. I remember this. He's still my life insurance guy. And I won't say their name, but every time I meet with him, he'd take me to lunch. But I knew he was going to ask me with a pen out. He'd go, give me 2 names of people I can call. And he'd go click, and he'd just be quiet until I gave it to him. But so every time he would take me to lunch, it was like, all I have to do is give this guy 2 names. So I'd find him 2 legitimate names. And the idea is sometimes you just ask somebody like, hey, well, here's a couple of people who'd like to, could possibly benefit from what we do. Would you be willing to make an introduction? Most people will find 1 for you, or not 2. If they won't find you 1, then you got to ask why. Well, you don't have any friends. Do you not like what we're doing? That's one. The other is then you look at your current customer base and say, oh, I've got a lot of people in the real estate industry. I've got a lot of people in the franchise consultants. I'm going to go find people like them and say, oh, we work with people like you. Do you want to have a conversation? So you just take the mirroring and liking and just take the data you have and say, I think I can help other people. It's amazing how many times people miss that step. Like you're helping. You think this is your one market, but you keep, maybe you keep landing a bunch of, other types, and you're like, that seems to resonate with them, and you go for it. But let's look at similar data sets.
Absolutely, I agree. I did a whole episode with Adi Kalkabachin about referrals, the power of referrals and asking referrals. And I'm going to include that in the show notes because we really dug deep into that subject. Because sometimes it can be uncomfortable for people to just go ask directly, hey, Thomas, who do you know that, do you think, from all your clients, who do you think will need processes and procedures that we can help them document their processes and procedures? Sometimes it's not easy to ask that question. Sometimes we feel like we are putting people on the spot or whatnot. I mean, what is your take of that?
Well, I'll tell you, just from a branding standpoint, when you say that, I hear cost. I don't know what the value is. But if you came to me and said, hey, how would you like to be able to not work in your business, but work on it? Or how would you like to be able to franchise your business out or sell it so you don't have to be the one in it? Which most small business owners that's the problem when they want to sell or they're the core. I face that too, that I'm one of the front and center people in the company, but I'm like, so that's the question I would ask is, oh, cool. Well, to do that, you need repeatable processes that your teams can execute, that you can go hire to and train to, and it creates a whole effect. That is secondary on my mind for sure, because I'm saying, let's sell stuff, let's get stuff delivered. We have our processes. I know they have them somewhat documented. Could it be better? Sure. But you have to have this stuff. Like the quicker you can get to a repeatable model of revenue, the way faster you're going to grow, because you could then what your statements are, your sales everything falls in line, your content, your engagement, what you're going to go comment and who you're going to go comment to all matter. The challenge is I've seen, especially as an entrepreneur the last 3 years, is that your offerings change, that you're pivoting to accommodate, as a business, what markets really work, what the pricing is. And so it's hard to document your processes, put a lot of effort and time until you have something that's you're seeing as becoming repeatable. But then on a process, the problem is too that the customers like agility. They like flexibility and customization without additional cost, but just shifting of resources. So, this is a challenge I know we face with this repeatable process.
Absolutely.
Our process is agile.
The process has to be agile. There has to be changes. And that's one of the things that we handle absolutely as part of the services that we provide. So that's a very good point, because that will be right there, a point of conversation. We probably will engage in conversation back and forth, and then it will be easy to jump into it as opposed to ask you, who do you know that needs that, right? So I think part of this demonstration right here, I got you to talk, you got me to talk, we had this, we can have another 30-minute conversation about it, and then you go, oh yeah, and then you can probably feel more comfortable giving me names, right? So I think it's just, you have to make it not awkward, right? It has to be real. It has to be something that you are convinced that, yes, I do understand the challenges and problems of entrepreneurs, and I have a solution that maybe doesn't apply to you, but it can apply to somebody else. But we're also talking about existing customers. So by this time, they know you. But when you're talking about the insurance person, well, that's your insurance agent. But let's say it also applies to general referral partners. You just engage in real conversation, find the pain points, find what that person can help with, and then you all of a sudden start remembering people you can refer to.
You're right. And you actually made me think of something. So one thing we implemented about a year ago is I used to meet with customers once a month, just a free time. And what I find was, because we were offering too small of a offering, it was, we weren't making people invest enough in it. So it wasn't working well enough. So people were leaving quicker. Once we said, no, you have to really invest more in your lead generation to make it work. So if you're only putting a few $100 a month and expecting to get great results, you're going to get exactly kind of what you've put into it from a time and effort. You can get overcharged by many people, but the idea is that there's a certain level of service that we bring that I now meet with my customers weekly. So I get to know them, at some point, I know about their kids like we do, and we get to know each other. And asking for referral is something I don't do until I've established that we really are adding value. And I'm obsessed. And when I add value, I'm going to ask you for a referral. I'm like, but I want to make sure that I know that we're adding value every week. We're going to meet. If you have concerns, you bring it up. It's okay. We'll solve it. But that constant touch point is super important to the referral process. And execution is the other half of that. So they have to know and like you, because I've gotten referrals from people stuff didn't work out for them. So we've had customers that have left us like, hey, this isn't for me. I think I'm going to try something else. But they still refer people to us because they're doing something different. They just didn't want to do what we were doing. They wanted to go do X, Y, and Z and do, it's just a budget question. But you can still get referrals from people that are customers or work customers if you do that. If you have a constant and you have a connection to them. It's not as scalable, but as you grow your company, you're just going to have to replicate those functions and new people. And quite honestly, probably have some good processes in place to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be guessing a bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It doesn't have to be you as the business owner. I mean, I've done it with other companies where you grow and scale. So there will always be a person that is providing a service. And that person is the one that can actually do that, because those are the ones that are going to build the rapport and the relationship with the client or customer. So you have to train those people. Let's say, for instance, you're a dentist and you open like 4 different practices. You do train the receptionist and the hygienist and the assistants to actually do that, because those are the ones that are going to see the patients every 3 months or every 6 months. And those are the ones who are going to build the rapport. So I think to your point, you're right. It has to be scaled, but you have to figure out how to scale that one as well.
Exactly. And it becomes a people scaling. So if you could scale technology, my advice is by all means do it, but don't lose the human connection side on a B2B services or a higher ticket item. No one's laying a credit card down for $3,000 a month if you're a smaller business, right, for a service without talking to somebody. And I would say probably up to about $500 people will do that, but after that, they're going to want to make sure there's a human on the other side and what they're getting. So, and if you're $1 million a year or $200 million a year services, you already know this. You're going to need to have connections and meet people and talk with them. So don't forget to be authentic and real. And as we kind of close our time, I cannot tell you the importance of being authentic, of not selling, but educating, and let people just buy from you. And it's you can be funny, you can be shameless in your plugs, but don't push. Just educate and say, hey, when you're ready, I'm here, and people will appreciate that. And when they are ready, they will be there.
Absolutely, and that was actually the first point that you brought up in terms of marketing, how to control the budget, the marketing within budget and not go over it. It will be like the point that we discussed in terms of like how to actually correctly engage on social media, make friends basically, build value, make friends and make connections, and then you can have the communication later. So absolutely. Thomas, if people want to find out about you, where should I go?
Just go to instantly-relevant.com. If you schedule time on that or, say book a call, it's with me. I still take those calls to meet all new potential customers. I'm there with you on the onboarding. So just instantly-relevant.com. If you're on LinkedIn, you can search for Thomas Helfrich. That's another way. And the call to action on my profile goes to my Calendly, the same place. But either one of those ways, I will connect with you.
Great. And before we end off, I would like to thank Jeremy Slate from Command Your Brand that introduced us. And it was a great connection. I really appreciate this interview. A lot of knowledge, a lot of things that I learned today, and I'm sure our listeners as well. So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.